Great.
Yep.
Are we all here?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Jim, you wouldn't believe this interview Greg just gave me. It's just astonishing. Absolutely fucking astonishing.
Every time I talk to him, he blows my mind.
It's fucking unbelievable. I cannot believe it.
Well, yeah, but most of the information is so far out, it's incredulous to most people.
Well, I'm telling you, he explained it so beautifully today. I understood it better than I ever have before, I'll tell you.
But I will say that everything he's ever told me that I checked out, it turns out to be right. So.
Can you guys go on video? Can I see you?
I'll get us on the air.
Yeah.
This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, with my very special guest. Again, you've heard him in the past from New Zealand. Today he's living in Europe, actually in the UK. He has written many books, very controversial, fascinating stuff. Greg Hallett, welcome back to The Real Deal.
Thanks, Jim. It's been a while. It's been It's been a while, and it's been a journey.
I can't believe you'd let mere assassination attempts drive you out of New Zealand.
Well, it was the 12th one, and I thought, the 13th is just striving to be a bit too lucky. So
yes.
The Rugby World Cup was having its opening ceremony. So I escaped on that day because all the security was busy and focused inward on the games and not on people leaving the country. So I literally escaped. I got driven to the airport by someone who knows what they're doing, and got seen onto the airplane. And it was a great relief to leave. There was an enormous amount of pressure on me. So I left on the 9th of September 2011, which was the opening of the World Cup. And on the 1st of June 2011, a potential witness for the case, Errol John Hinksman, was murdered. Which was interesting because some friends of his went to visit him, and they had, I'm not sure if I've told you this already, but they had half a bottle of beer in their hand, and there's a drinking ban in the inner city. And he lived right next to Merrill Park, which is about 200 metres north of 200 metres up the hill from the town hall. And so they just went on a casual visit, and they were chased by police officers on foot for 45 minutes up and down alleyways.
For having a can of beer?
Yeah, which is like, let's say, a $40 fine. But they were chasing everyone away from the area. Now, Errol John Hinksman wasn't a methamphetamine user, and he was very tidy. And when he was murdered, he was found to have had a methamphetamine overdose, and his place was a mess. So he was killed. Errol John Hinksman was killed, and he was one of Peter Williams' tight 10 in the heroin trafficking. Errol John Hinksman was one of the ones in charge of collecting heroin debts. So heroin users that owed money would be confronted by Errol John Hinksman. He was about in his early 60s when it happened, when he died. When he was killed.
He was an enforcer.
Yeah. By that time, he was a tall, skinny guy.
So what was the reason to think he was going to be a witness against Williams?
I lived just across Myers Park from him. So we were virtually neighbours. We would have been 100 metres door to door. And if he had managed to be a witness on my behalf, it would have been the demise of Peter Williams, and it would have been the demise of the New Zealand judiciary that's been protecting Peter Williams QC, his heroin trafficking, his murders, and Peter Williams has been using pedophilia to control judges, and he's got his common law wife, Henny Phillips, doing scat, which is defecation, ritualistic defecation, on judges, lawyers, and reporters. So they've managed to get a strong...
You mean literally? This is not figure. This is not a form of performance art. This is doing a sexual ritual, a bizarre one.
Yeah, sex shit, scat. So with that amount of shame involved, they had total control. So he was allowed to not answer any questions and not present any evidence. And actually have the case heard in my absence. I had 8 murder attempts in New Zealand, and I left the country in March 2010, returned in September 2010. And during that time, the New Zealand judiciary had the case against me heard in my absence, with all my evidence suppressed, and with no notification to me of the hearing. And the District Court of Auckland and the High Court of Auckland stopped notifying me by email 4 months either side of the hearing. So I didn't even know that it had happened. And it was when I'd come back to New Zealand for a month, they saw that I'd been noticed enough around town to appear to have been present previously when I was overseas. So they published the results of the hearing in the paper, which I then appealed. And when I appealed the hearing, Peter Williams had a retired police inspector called Winston West in a full motorcycle suit and helmet jump on my parked car. My Mercedes had already been blown up, so I was in a loan car, a Honda Civic, which is a very small car. And he ripped the rear vision mirror off the car, and he ripped the wiper blade and arm off the car. And this was outside the Auckland High Court in broad daylight.
And what in God's name was he doing?
Well, he was working for Peter Williams.
But I mean, this was supposed to be a form of intimidation.
Yeah, I just won the right to appeal the case that I wasn't invited to.
So he was telegraphing a message that you're running some risks, that you're doing some things they would not want you to do.
Yeah.
Was Peter Williams the PM at this point?
No, he was a Queen's Counsel lawyer, and he was the legal head of the Mr. Asia heroin trafficking syndicate, which was trafficking heroin rampantly from early 1970 to 1979, when a lot of them got caught, including his own junior lawyer. But Peter Williams had actually been trafficking heroin since at least the early 1960s, according to Army intelligence. But I've got information that he was trafficking heroin at least from 1954. And that was coming from South America inside Philips fluorescent light tubes. And they'd break open the light tubes in a house in Waihi, which is about 5 hours drive south of Auckland. Now it's about an hour and a half. And housewives were breaking it open, getting the powder out, and sending the cartons back to Philips in Holland as a measure to supposedly improve their packaging, but really it was a measure of how much heroin had come through. So the Queen of Holland, I think it was Juliana at the time, she was actually involved in heroin trafficking with her husband, Prince Bernard, who was a very close friend of Prince Philip. It's interesting that Peter Williams admitted in the High Court of Auckland that he was Prince Philip's agent in New Zealand. So we're dealing with royal heroin trafficking.
Oh, that's fairly stunning, isn't it? I suppose not surprising, all things considered, given the CIA is the biggest drug running operation in the world today.
Yeah, and that's sort of under the umbrella of the American government. You can't touch it, and they're all above the law. So the drug trafficking is done en masse by people who are above the law, which is the intelligence agencies, Queen's Counsels, and the royal families. Now, the British royal family is actually fake. It's a fraud. It's flat-lie royal. It's been an illegitimate royal family since at least 1901, 1902, but really it's been an illegitimate flat-lie royal, non-royal family since 1852.
And is this because of genetic interruptions, that it's the wrong gene line, given it's supposed to be an hereditary monarchy?
No, it's because of this. Queen Victoria had a firstborn son before King Edward VII, and that son, whose name is Marcos Manuel, he was born in wedlock, legitimately, and he's the true King of England, and his descendants are the true King of England, the true monarchs of England.
So why did they finesse? Why did they skip him for the sake of Edward?
So they could run the British Empire as a mafia.
Please elaborate on that.
Yeah.
I mean, what, you know, if you got a legitimate heir, you'd think you'd allow him to ascend to the crown.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to do. I've actually been adopted into the true royal family. I was adopted on the summer solstice of 2010, and again on Leap Day 2012. So that's actually on video in the form of a knighthood, elevating me to Lord Chancellor of the true Prince of Wales, and it's on the worldoftruth.net. So if you go to that website, theworldoftruth.net, you can see the knighthood, and the sword we're using is the sword of King Dom Fernando II, who was the most popular king of Portugal, and that sword was given to him by Duke Ernst II, Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, who was the Premier Duke of the Saxe-Coburg and Gothas, from which the his younger brother was Prince Consort Albert, who was married to Queen Victoria. So even Duke Ernst II knew that we were the true royal family. Now, I use the royal we because I'm adopted. It's just kind of an advantage. The sword was given, from memory, the date was 10th of June 1869. The sword was given to us and then passed down through the family. And it's one of about 32 royal marks. We've got more, but we're presenting around about 32, 33 royal marks showing that the family I've been adopted into is the true royal family. So I'm in England at the moment. I've been here 3 or 4 months, and I'm acting as proxy, as stand-in for the true monarch and the true Prince of Wales. And we've been working on this story now for about 2.5 years.
Well, I imagine it would make quite a sensation if it were revealed to the British public.
Well, that's what we're doing. We've got one book here that's a very early edition of it, The Hidden King of England.
The Hidden King of England, yes.
Right? And
the photograph on the cover there is...
that's Marcos Manuel when he's 16.
Yes.
Photographed in the Azores, and he's actually surrounded in what's called the menorah position, where he's centerpiece in 2 triangles, one inverted and one upright. He ended up living with his mother, Queen Victoria, on the Isle of Wight from the age of 16 to 21 or 22. And he was literally the gardener, as in Chauncey Gardner, as in Boy Chance, as in Being There, in Peter Sellers' movie Being There.
Yes.
Now, Being There is actually a direct parody of Marcos Manuel. And Peter Sellers had inside knowledge. And here's how it went. Queen Victoria's youngest daughter was Princess Beatrice, and Princess Beatrice was Queen Victoria's secretary. And Princess Beatrice was in charge of editing Queen Victoria's letters and diaries. And what they did was remove any mention of Marcos Manuel and any mention of his father, George, who was blind Prince George of Cumberland, who became blind King George V of Hanover. He was married to Queen Victoria on the 18th of September 1833. And Marcos Manuel was born on the 25th of April 1834. Now, Princess Beatrice was married to Prince Battenberg, whose brother was Prince Louis of Battenberg, whose son was Lord Louis Mountbatten, who was the most prominent, prominent non-royal. He was assassinated in 1979, and that also relates to heroin trafficking. So Princess Beatrice was editing Queen Victoria's diaries. She would tell her husband, who would tell his brother, who would tell his son, Lord Louis Mountbatten. Now, Lord Louis Mountbatten's father, Prince Louis Battenberg, had an illegitimate child with Lily Langtry, who was a famous actress. She was also the mistress to King Edward VII. Now, Lord Louis Mountbatten also had an illegitimate child with an actress, and that child's name is Peter Sellers.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's 25 miles from Broadlands, where Lord Louis Mountbatten lived, which is a mansion and about 5,000 acres. And he used to go down to Portsmouth and play the bongos in bands and get small cameo acting parts. And he had a sexual relationship with Peg Marks, Peg Sellers, Peg Nee Marks Sellers. And Peg Sellers had just had a stillborn boy called Peter. So Lord Louis conceived a child with her, and that child was called Richard Sellers, Richard Henry Sellers. But it was always called Peter, and that's how you get Peter Sellers. Right? But Richard, short for Richard, is Dickie. And Lord Louis Mountbatten became known as Dickie Mountbatten. Right, so Lord Louis Mountbatten gets his nickname Dickie from his son Peter, whose actual name was Richard.
Isn't that funny?
Oh, believe me, that's easier written down. So
I presume Peter Sellers was aware of his lineage.
yeah, Lord Louis Mountbatten used to brief him, and when Princess Beatrice Battenberg briefed her husband, the husband's brother, who briefed his son, which was Lord Louis Mountbatten. So Lord Louis Mountbatten was the nephew of Princess Beatrice, and he would then brief his son, his illegitimate son, Peter Sellers. And Peter Sellers, when he was born, just before he was born, he moved to a very nice apartment overlooking a mile of green and then the sea, overlooking Portsmouth, all the shipping coming in, and over to the Isle of Wight, which is where Queen Victoria lived. So he was always intrigued, really, by the Isle of Wight and Queen Victoria and what went on there. Now, Being There was the second to last movie that Peter Sellers made, and it was the last movie that he got to see. Lord Louis Mountbatten was assassinated on the 27th of August 1979. Exactly 12 weeks later, Being There screened, and then almost exactly 7 months later, Peter Sellers died of a heart attack. And then 21 years after that, Princess Margaret died. Now, 21 will become important later on. Peter Sellers had an affair with Princess Margaret, and you can't have an affair with a royal unless you've got strong royal connections or royal blood or something close. That's how it was then. It's a bit less now with Commoner Kate and the faux Prince William.
She's impressed me tremendously.
Who? Princess Margaret?
No, Kate.
Really?
Kate Middleton.
Oh, well. So what Peter Sellers did in the movie Being There was do a complete parody of Marcos Manuel living on the Isle of Wight. So much so, and so clear is the parody, that he inserts, he's got a lot of TV on there, he watches a lot of TV in the movie, and all of the TV is pertinent. He's even got a basketball team standing there with their numbers on their t-shirts, and the numbers are the birth date of Marcos Manuel and the age in which he went to the Isle of Wight to stay with his mother, Queen Victoria. So what Peter Sellers left us with was a codification. He was a Freemason, so the rule amongst the Freemasons is to hide things in plain sight. And what Peter Sellers did was reveal to us the true story as far as he knew it from Princess Beatrice's letters, Queen Victoria's letters, copied by Princess Beatrice, edited by Princess Beatrice, with the good stuff going to her nephew Lord Louis Mountbatten and to his son Peter Sellers. So that's how we've got a public mark available to everyone of Queen Victoria's firstborn son's existence.
In being there.
In the movie being there, 1979. Yes.
Peter's death was of natural causes, was it not?
Yeah, it was a massive heart attack. He'd had heart attacks before, but yeah, he died.
He's one of the most brilliant comic actors I ever saw.
Well, I actually think he acted like a piece of cardboard. So we can disagree.
Well, it's part of his shtick, you know. I mean, he had this manner. It was so stunning and hilarious.
Yeah, maybe for its time, but yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. I think, you know, like a lot of actors who are related to the royals, they're advanced. Like Sarah Bernhardt, Lily Langtry, Noel Coward, and Peter Sellers. Their careers are all advanced, and they end up with this enormous filmography because they've got some relationship with the royals. And Noel Coward has a relationship with the royals because he had a homosexual affair with the Duke of Kent, King Edward VIII, and from memory I think it was also King George VI.
Noel Coward had homosexual affairs with those two.
Yeah, when the Duke of Kent died, he actually faked his death, but when he died, I think it was the 19th of August 1942, he was a cross-dresser and a morphine addict. And Noel Coward had a lot of letters from the Duke of Kent, who was King George VI's brother, which were essentially love letters. So they had to be extracted. And Noel Coward's career was already heavily promoted because he's having a sexual affair with the royal, but his career was even further promoted. Yep.
So the royals were making a difference even in Peter Sellers' career?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. He had basically carte blanche. He even did skits with Princess Margaret for film and TV.
With Princess Margaret herself, yes.
Yeah. And Princess Margaret was, she had a sexual liaison with two West Indian men at the same time. And that was photographed, and it was kept in bank vault, Lloyd's bank vault. And that bank vault was raided. Let me see. I'll just find the exact date on that. And the photos were captured.
So Princess Margaret had a certain enthusiasm for sex?
Yeah, she did, and she liked sex with black men. So it was on the 11th of September 1971 when a gang robbed the Lloyd's Bank in London, and they actually produced photos of Princess Margaret having sex with two West Indian men, and then it was Lord Louis Mountbatten who was asked to come forward, and he brought the bank robbers new identities, new passports, and they were allowed to keep the money, and they're allowed to escape out of England without harassment.
On the condition they return the photographs and film.
On the condition that they return those photographs and film, yeah. And there was more photographs of aristocracy that the police had, which were also in those bank vaults. And British aristocracy never even came to claim them. So they're all, transgender stuff.
Greg, we're going to take our first break. Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, with my special guest from the UK, Greg Hallett. We'll be right back. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, with my special guest from the UK, Greg Hallett. We're learning things you never, ever thought you'd ever know about the Royals. Greg.
So I've been working on this book for about 2.5 years with the true Prince of Wales, helping them with their family tree and helping to uncover the meanings of the royal marks that's been handed down to them. And these royal marks include the rings of queens and the swords of kings, photographs of Marcos Manuel, the hidden king of England, and his family tree dating back to Queen Victoria and blind Prince George of Cumberland. That was the status when they married. Now, when Queen Victoria married, so Marcos Manuel was legitimate. He was born in wedlock, and then he was hidden. And there is a history every now and then of hiding kings, and they tend to be buried in what's called a Siva Lingam, which is a sort of a short dome with straight sides, not square, round, grave. And I was given the sword of Duke Ernst II, the sword of King Dom Ferdinand II of Portugal, on Leap Day 2012, so on the 29th of February 2012, and I was told to sleep with the sword and then hold it up to the castle in the morning. I'm a late sleeper, so morning for me was midday. I just made it, you know. So I got up there and I held
You had to make it before noon.
Yeah, I made it before noon. I got up there and it was a beautiful day, and I held the sword up to Pena Castle, which is the castle in Sintra in Portugal, 20 kilometres northwest of Lisbon. That's where King Dom Fernando II lived. And so that was the 1st of March, and that same day I was elevated in a ceremony with that sword to Lord Chancellor, and that's on theworldoftruth.net as well. It's a video about 10 minutes long. So that was the 1st of March. I held the sword up to Pena Castle, and on the 11th of March I went for a walk up to the castle and I found the Siva Lingam. I found the grave of the hidden king Marcos Manuel, and it had been missing for 102 years.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you happen to just stumble over it?
I'm very good at getting lost and finding things.
That's really remarkable.
So I photographed it and then presented it to the true Prince of Wales, and did some analysis on it, and then he brought a royal mark, which was an etching done around 1850. It was done in 1850, December 1850, by King Dom Ferdinand II of Portugal, and it's a brilliant etching, and it had been missing for about 2 years, and they'd never analysed that royal mark. So they got the royal mark, they got that mark, and we analysed it, and there's a central figure in it, and I said, that's a blind man. And Francisco, the true Prince of Wales, Francisco goes, oh, how could we not see it? You know, so it was blind Prince George of Cumberland, blind King George V of Hanover. So then the whole genealogy of Marcos Manuel was actually in this etching, and the etching showed the Siva Lingam. So then we compared the Siva Lingam with the etching, and it was a very good representation. Right, so we had
That's
a confirmation.
Really quite something.
So we had a confirmation from King Dom Ferdinand II of Portugal that this was the place where Marcos Manuel would be buried. This was the Siva Lingam, and Siva Lingam is a place where you bury secret kings and hidden kings.
Perfect. So the etching tied it all together. genealogically,
Yeah, well, see,
historically, and even physically.
oh, absolutely, and it marks a place as well.
Yes.
It marks a place and it marks a time because it was known by December 1850, and Marcos Manuel was actually murdered. He was murdered by his younger brother on the 1st of April 1910, and his younger brother was King Edward VII. Right, King Edward VII was the king from 1901, 1902 to 1910. And after he murdered his brother, he died 5 weeks later. Exactly 5 weeks later.
Of natural causes.
Yeah, well, he's incredibly fat. King Edward VII was 5 foot tall and 4 foot around. He had a 4 foot waist, 1.22 meters. So he's always portrayed as this, tall, large figure, but he's
Well, do you weigh
he was really
300 or 400 or more pounds?
he was a legal midget. He was a legal midget, and he was just on the border. And he was just this round, roly-poly man who was incredibly vicious. He was an incredibly distasteful man. So he murdered his older brother because King Edward VII didn't particularly want to die with his older brother saying, "Yeah, I've been the king all along. King Edward VII is a fake." So the fake king, Edward VII, murdered his older brother, the true and hidden king, Marcos Manuel. King Edward VII was illegitimate, and Marcos Manuel was the only legitimate royal of Queen Victoria's. So
The only one. Well, Queen Victoria knew there were a lot of machinations happening around her. So she got on first, conceived a child, married and gave birth to a legitimate prince. And that legitimized her as a princess and a queen. Prince Consort Albert was homosexual, Queen Victoria then married Prince Consort Albert bigamously, and he was a homosexual who actually wore what the gays called the Prince Albert, which is a chain around your waist and through the foreskin, so your penis is always vertical, but you can't conceive, right? So Prince Consort Albert didn't conceive any of Queen Victoria's children. All of Queen Victoria's children were conceived by Lionel Nathan Rothschild. What would that device you described mean you couldn't perform intercourse?
Yeah.
So,
Lionel Nathan Rothschild was known as the King of Kings because he financed virtually all of the monarchies in Europe and even some in Asia. So he had breeding rights, and he had breeding rights with Queen Victoria and conceived all of Queen Victoria's children, which made them all bigamously born illegitimate batards. That's what bastards are called amongst royalty. They're called batards. So that's carried on to today. So the royal family we have today is all batard, and the term for that is flatlie royal. Hello, Jim.
I'm with you. It's just astonishing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the whole history is just utterly astonishing.
Yeah. Now there was a move. There was a move. There's actually, this goes back to about 1779, I think it was. There was a letter written where Amschel Mayer Rothschild, who was the father of Nathan Mayer Rothschild, he said that the true royal, basically this is what he said that the true royal family could come back on the throne 200 years after his death. So we've had a fake royal family from at least 25th of April 1852 to now, so that the mafia could take over usurp the royal family, utilize the royal family, knowing that they're illegitimate batards, bigamously born, so that the mafia essentially became the government under Lord Palmerston, who was Queen Victoria's Prime Minister. And that is due to end on the 19th of September 2012.
That's not too far off.
No. No, it's not. It's about, I don't know, 8 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks.
So what is going to happen?
Well, this is called the Shin. And the Shin means the forbidden secret. And I've basically inherited the role to run the Shin, to run the forbidden secret. And that's actually somewhat predicted by Peter Sellers, that the person who uncovers this would come from New Zealand, which is the opposite side of the planet to where it's happening. And the Queen Victoria and her psychics also seem to predict it. So what Prince Philip did with Peter Williams was supply heroin into the areas that I was living in, and I was the target. Got to my brothers and sisters, but didn't get to me. And it was just rampant right through the North Shore where I lived. And there's a theory that one of the psychics predicted that, because Queen Victoria was using psychics from the age of 19, so from 1937, 38. One of the predictions is that the person who uncovers the secret will come from the opposite side of the planet. And New Zealand's the opposite side of the planet to Portugal. So the person will come from the opposite side of the planet, north. So a lot of the heroin was targeted into the areas called North. North Island, North Auckland, North Shore. And I lived the North Island of New Zealand, north of Auckland, and then on the North Shore in Northcote. Went to Northcote Intermediate, and I lived on North Grove Ave, and then I moved to North Harbour. They still didn't get me. So, I'm Portuguese. My great-grandfather and great-grandmother are both Portuguese. So, it was only natural that I would end up in Portugal, and then Queen Victoria's great-great-great-great-great-grandson, who is the legitimate heir to the throne, he lives in Portugal.
We lost a word there, Greg. We lost a word there. Who's the legitimate?
He's the great-great-great-great, 5 greats,
Yeah.
grandson of Queen Victoria, who is the legitimate heir to the throne. When you see the family tree, he's the legitimate heir to the throne. He lives in Portugal. So we contacted each other in 2009, and he wasn't sure who one of his 5 great-grandparents were, or 6 great-grandparents were. 6 generations. So I managed to fill him in and give him some background on that, and then he sent me photographed, and I could see from the photograph who he was. So I said, I'll see you in 2 weeks. So having had about 8 murder attempts in New Zealand, it wasn't very hard to leave. And the overall mission was for me to get to Portugal and ascertain that this person was the true descendant of Queen Victoria. And so he spent probably 6 weeks. We sat next to each other for 6 weeks, working on the computer, taking photographs. and analysing objects, and he would bring in royal objects handed down from Queen Victoria or another monarch or another duke. And so we went through about, I think it was about 26 royal marks. We photographed them and analysed them, and we compared them against 2 dictionaries of symbolism to see that the marks on them were the true royal marks, going back into the families that they claim to be from. And so we succeeded in that. It took us about 6 weeks to really develop it into, I think it was about a 220-page book then. And we had about 200 photographs in the book of these royal marks. And then I went to London and met you on the 6th of July, 2010.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, in between that, I went to Roslyn Chapel and delivered the Holy Grail to Roslyn Chapel on four occasions in May 2010. And I met an American psychic woman there who accompanied me on the last trip to Roslyn Chapel. And it turned out they were both heading to the same location in Wales, to a castle in Wales. So I can drive on the left, she can't, so we drove down to Wales. And the person in Wales that we stayed with is quite likely, well, the most likely person to be, well, he is actually, he definitely is. He's the direct line descendant to the Prince of Wales from the 1400s. He was the last Welsh Prince of Wales. So that was kind of interesting. So I know 2 Prince of Wales. One in Portugal, who's head of the throne of England, Scotland, Ireland, and is Prince of Hanover, and the other one who's the true Prince of Wales.
And you're quite convinced the fellow in Portugal is the legitimate?
Oh, there's just no question. We've got, put it this way, have you got to wind up for the next segment, have you?
No,
Okay.
no, we got to. We'll have a minute or two. We got a few minutes before.
Well, I took a bit of a film crew down there to Portugal in March, and we gave the film guy probably about 7 days' notice, maybe 5 or 4 at the least. So, and I already know him, so he comes down and he films us at dinner, chatting away on a small camera, and it's very casual and it's great film footage, and we're talking at a good pace, like as you'd have a conversation with friends. And 5 o'clock the next day, I was just so sick. I was actually sitting next to the fire, roaring like a lion, absolutely delirious. I managed to get up to the hotel room, and I was just face planted on the bed for 3 days. And the Hidden King of England, Francisco, he was the same, and the film guy was fine.
Had you been poisoned?
Oh, absolutely. There's just no question. And then we got about, let's say, 75% well, 3/4 well, the day before the film guy left.
So the film guy had done it.
So the film guy got a lot of background footage. He got us having a conversation at dinner. But when it came to the main interviews, we were just talking like at about this fast and not really thinking too well, So it was just too slow to edit,
Had he set it up? Do you think he was the one who drugged you?
Oh no, not at all.
Okay.
I know him really well. He's a great friend, He's a top friend. We hang out a lot and have a lot of fun together, and
who had access to your food or drink that could have done?
See, another thing is we were sitting in a restaurant. And we just had spies all over us, We would sit in an empty restaurant, and then a spy would come in and sit down, and he'd have a camera in a bag, and he'd sit at the table just like behind us with the bag and the camera in the bag pointing at us, and then he'd go for a walk and come back, and then another 2 spies would come in and chat to him and leave, and then when we left, all the spies running up and down the street after us. So we got outside and the spies were all there, so we sent the film guy to walk down the street. And then we sent Queen Victoria's descendant to drive after him. And then they drove ahead, and then I walked past the spies walking back to find me. It was really bad spy work. But, you know, we were poisoned. It actually took me about 4 months to get over it, and I was actually in hospital for 2 days, and I think that was the cause of it. I was in hospital 3 months later, actually, in early June. In absolute agony, and I was just like screaming in pain, and I was just wondering if all the poisons had somehow coagulated.
How was being in the hospital the cause of it?
No, I had to go to hospital because of the
Yeah,
pain.
as a consequence, right.
Because this.
I mean, you weren't being maltreated in the hospital.
Oh no, I went to hospital because I was just like just in agony,
in anguish. Yeah,
you know, I was screaming the hospital down. I was it was an absolute agony. I was on a massive amount of morphine to shut me up.
I hear doctors rave about morphine. It's
Well, you know,
God's greatest gift.
yeah, it was definitely a godsend then. So, you know, the question is then, why would they poison us if they didn't think that Francisco was the legitimate monarch to the throne of England?
Could these be agents of the crown?
Oh, absolutely. You know, like the British royal family can virtually engage to their ends any intelligence agency across the globe.
I mean, they wouldn't be too pleased with having the throne contested.
Well, it's interesting because we did another video on the 2nd of August 2010, which is about 3 weeks after I did that interview with you in London. And we delivered a letter to David Cameron at 10 Downing Street, requesting him to facilitate the changeover of the monarchy, as we were the legitimate royal family. And I had the Hidden King of England book, just 20 copies done, just as a tester, to see what the reaction was, etc. And I actually gave a talk on it, a couple of talks up in Scotland on it. So we had pre-booked with 10 Downing Street, so they knew we were coming. We'd sent them the letter. We'd sent it by registered post. We gave them 20 working days, which was 1 month. And then we went there and we'd phone beforehand. Have you received the letter? Yes, very likely. And then, have you received the letter? We don't know. And then you go there. Have you received the letter? And there's no record of the letter, right? So then
Even though it was registered.
It was registered post, yeah. So then I go to present the letter physically to 10 Downing Street, and they wouldn't take the letter, right? Normally they'll just take the letter if you go there and present it, right? They wouldn't take the letter, so we had to go around to the Army and Navy stores and post it there, which is about another 15-minute walk. Now that was the 2nd of August. So what they did was they got hold of a copy of the book. This is 10 Downing Street and Buckingham Palace. And they studied the contents of the book using scholars, etc. And they realized that this was a legitimate and superior claim to the throne of England. Right?
Greg, this is just astonishing. We got to take another break. Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal with my special guest, Greg Hallett. A truly astonishing story. We'll be right back. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, continuing my conversation with Greg Hallett. You've just delivered the book, and I take it you finally got the letter too, and the scholars have studied and concluded that there's a superior claimant to the throne of England.
Yes. Yeah, so what they decided to do was pull a fast one. So they decided that Prince William would have to get engaged and married, and that they would change the laws of succession to the throne
Really?
Yes, that's what's happened.
In order to circumvent this challenge to the throne,
Yeah.
to the legitimacy of the present occupant, they would change the laws
Yes.
of succession.
Yes.
How stunning. You would think that's something that would never be changed.
Well, I'll just find it for you. I'll just find the absolute details just so that I get the dates absolutely correct. Okay, so we delivered the book on the 2nd of August 2010 to 10 Downing, or we delivered the letter. Then they got hold of the book. There were about 20 copies floating around, a lot of them in Scotland. And then, so let's say it took them to the 1st of September to study it and realise that it was a superior and genuine claim to the throne. All the photographs were genuine, all of the objects were genuine, and all of the decodification of the royal objects we had were true. So they found that we had actually done a very scholarly job.
That's astonishing. This is all just astonishing, Greg.
Yeah. Well, you did say I looked like a royal when you first met me. I'd only been a royal then about 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Well, I think your skills in research aided you immensely here.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. So on the 2nd of August, letters delivered. By the 1st of September 2010, they've decided that it is a legitimate and superior claim. So Prince William is instructed to choose between his girlfriends which one he's going to have as a fiancée. And he's got a month to do it. So he does that in September. And then all of October, there's betting at Ladbrokes on Prince William getting married or getting engaged before the end of the year. And the betting was actually huge. People were making a lot of money out of it.
Well, it was actually a sure thing.
Yeah, and then his engagement was announced on the 16th of November, 2010. And then they tried to change the laws. And instead of Prime Minister David Cameron contacting us, and we're the superior and legitimate royal family, he goes to the Commonwealth heads of state. So I'll just find the exact details so I can read it. Commonwealth, find. So David Cameron's further briefed by Queen Elizabeth that the only heir to the throne of the United Kingdom would be the children of Prince Charles or the current Prince of Wales. Now, we're the true Prince of Wales, and we have at least half a dozen marks to show that we are the true Prince of Wales, including acknowledgement from other royal families. So, David Cameron...
So there's actually quite a bit of awareness among the aristocracies of the world that this is the case.
Yeah, it's known. It's known and it's kept secret. Basically, if you reveal that Queen Victoria had a firstborn son, you're no longer part of the aristocracy. You're cold-shouldered. And if you... so basically, the people that knew about it, like Prime Minister Lord Palmerston, who was Prime Minister 3 times for Queen Victoria, he kept secret about it. But Lord Palmerston's stepdaughter, who also turned out to be his biological daughter, is called Viscountess Lady Frances Jocelyn. And she was also the governess of Queen Victoria's children. So you've got Lord Palmerston going, no, Marcus Manuel can't be king. And then you've got his daughter, who was Britain's leading female photographer, photographing Marcus Manuel and doing paintings of Marcus Manuel and doing codification to show that he was the true king and not King Edward VII. Right? And that's all in the family. It's just one family. You know, the Lord Palmerston, the Coopers. So in the so from the time we got the letter to 10 Downing Street on the 2nd of August 2010, and the time that they realised that it was real, which was end of September, and then in the October when Prince William was becoming engaged to communicate, David Cameron, instead of contacting us and saying, yes, we accept your challenge to the throne, David Cameron was to secretly brief the Commonwealth heads of government and get their approval that the only heir to the throne of the United Kingdom would be the children of Prince Charles or the Prince of Wales, and to disguise this as a gender and religious issue, which would then gain their approval. They go, oh yeah, so firstborn daughters are now allowed to become the monarch, and Catholics are now allowed to become the monarch. But really, it was about only Prince Charles's children could become the monarch.
To finesse the challenge, which I gather was not even mentioned or breathed to them.
No. So what Prime Minister David Cameron has done is he's obfuscated to the Commonwealth heads of government that there is a legitimate and superior challenge to the throne.
He's not allowed them to know that, right?
Yeah, he's not allowed them to know that. So Prime Minister David Cameron has to resign. He's not acting on the best interests of the country, nor is he acting on the best interests of the monarchy.
And this is a current issue right now today.
Yeah,
right?
so he is instilling he's trying to instill a fake monarchy in perpetuity in Britain, which means that the mafia, who knows this secret, then twists the royal family to go to war wherever they want and sell arms and deal drugs, and they'll go, well, we won't get caught because we know the monarchy's fake. See how
it does leave them liable to blackmail. I don't think there's any doubt.
Yeah, so it's very important that you have a true monarch. And part of the reason why we've had so many wars from 1852 to now is because the British monarchy that's fake has been signing off those wars to allow them to happen. See, the British monarchy has to sign a paper to send its country into war. And so any defence department that wants to go to war, or any group that wants to go to war, can do it and get the royal approval because the royal family's fake. Flatlie royal.
This is really, truly an astonishing story, Greg.
Yeah, it's a big one. So,
have any of the press picked up on any of this?
No, I've actually spoken to the press about it, and they've gone silent. They've just gone absolutely silent. But there's more. There's more. So, under Wikipedia, alternative successions of the English crown, quote, on 28th of October 2011, during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Perth, Australia, it was announced that British Prime Minister David Cameron's proposed changes to the royal succession laws in the 16 Commonwealth realms had received unanimous support of the other realms' Prime Ministers. The alterations would replace male preference primogeniture, under which sons take precedence over daughters in the lines of succession, with absolute primogeniture for descendants of the current Prince of Wales, end the ban on marriage of Dynists to Catholics, and limit the requirement for those in line to the throne to acquire permission of the sovereign to marry. However, the requirement of the sovereign to be in communion with the Church of England would remain. The Queen, Elizabeth II, is said to support the proposed changes. Well, she actually made sure they happened. The main point there is with absolute primogeniture for the descendants of the current Prince of Wales.
Yeah, to preclude any challenge to the crown from any other source on any other basis.
Yeah, they've actually...
regardless of the strength or legitimacy of the claim.
They've actually shot themselves in the foot there, because Prince William's father isn't Prince Charles.
Really?
It's King Juan Carlos of Spain.
Prince William's father is actually...
Yeah. Yeah, who and King Juan Carlos of Spain actually runs New Zealand. New Zealand is bankrupt.
So,
The country can't be bankrupt.
so he had a dalliance with Elizabeth. I mean, this
no,
was
no,
a
he had a
legitimate.
dalliance with Princess Diana.
Oh, with Diana, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah, Diana, of course.
yeah.
William, Diana, yes, of course.
So,
And that was while she was married to Prince Charles, of course.
absolutely,
And while Charles was still longing for Camilla.
absolutely, yep. And
And Diana was not too pleased by all of that.
no. She said there's 3 people in this marriage.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and Prince.
So the fact that
Prince
William is
Harry,
not the son, yeah,
Prince Harry is the son of Hewitt.
that, yes, he
Right.
looks so much like him.
However,
No one has any doubt about that, do they?
however, Prince Charles does have 2 children, and they're not Prince William and they're not Prince Harry.
So they would technically, under this new arrangement, be eligible to become the crown.
Well, that's why they've shot themselves in the foot, because neither Prince William or Prince Harry are Prince Charles' children, right? But Prince Harry has 2 children, but neither of them are legitimate, and neither of them are princes or princesses.
It's quite a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, so Prince Charles was dating Camilla. They fancied each other from when they were quite young. They were dating each other when they were 16 and 17. Camilla's actually older. So
Yes.
Camilla was 17, right?
Yes.
And Prince Charles was 16. And on Camilla Parker Bowles' 18th birthday, they conceived a child.
On her 18th birthday.
Yeah, on her 18th birthday, yep. And that child was adopted out by a royal servant. It was a royal servant. His daughter raised the child. And that child looked like Prince Charles and looked like Camilla Parker Bowles. So when he was 7, he was drugged with, what's that? That date Rohypnol, the date rape drug. Rohypnol.
Yeah.
And it had, it was in grapefruit juice, which actually increases the intensity of the drug, but leaves less of a trace.
Did it kill him?
No. His eyes were injected with pigment to change them from blue to brown.
Oh.
And then later his ears were pinned back, and later his front teeth were ground off. Ground right down.
Yeah.
So he didn't look like Prince Charles or Camilla. And he grew up in Gosport.
I mean, was he aware these things were happening to him? He must have known. His eye color had changed. His ears were different. His teeth were different.
Yeah, he said when his eye color was changed when he was 7, when he woke up, he was just screaming because it was like someone was rubbing sandpaper across his eyes.
Yes.
And he's now a telecommunications engineer in Australia.
Is he aware of his birth?
Yeah, and he's just before Kate and Will's wedding, he put out an email probably a couple of days beforehand. His name's Simon Charles Day, saying that he was the illegitimate son of Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, and he's married to a Torres Strait Islander, which is sort of half Aborigine, half Papua New Guinean. She's very black. She's a very black woman. And they had 6 kids, and 5 are still alive. So what Princess Diana did was fly out to Australia and be photographed holding all these Torres Strait Islander children. Which was a kind of an
that he had begot. Yes.
What's that?
That he had with this black woman.
Yeah.
These were the children. Yes.
The children.
These were his children she was holding.
Yeah, so to Princess Diana, they were her stepchildren. If they were those ones that she was holding. So she goes to Australia and holds up all these Torres Strait Islander and Aboriginal black children, and the Queen goes, Well, they could actually be my grandchildren. So it was another reason to kill her because she knew that. And Prince Charles.
Another reason to kill Diana.
Yeah. Well, it was ruled an unlawful killing. Her death was ruled an unlawful killing.
The automobile event in Paris.
Yeah. Now Prince
An
Charles.
unlawful killing.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of that until now, Greg.
Yeah. No, it's there.
I thought the official claim was it had been an accident.
There was another hearing in France. It was ruled unlawful killing. Yeah.
An unlawful killing. That sounds an awful lot like murder.
Yeah, it does. For royal murders, it's called an unlawful killing.
Have they determined the responsibility? Does it go right back to the crown then? Does it go to Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip?
Well, a lot of people have pointed the finger at Prince Philip. A lot.
Or really?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, really. Now, Prince Charles had another illegitimate child with a maid in Balmoral Castle. From memory, conceived in 1967, born in 1968. So, what they're saying with this Commonwealth heads of government, with Prime Minister David Cameron dealing with the Commonwealth heads of government on 28th of October 2011, is that they want to put either the daughter, the child of a maid with Prince Charles on the throne, or Prince Charles and Camilla's child on the throne when neither of them were married, so an illegitimate child. And it was interesting that when the guy got married, when Simon Charles Day got married, it was $131.50 for the wedding, and there's no support or contact or acknowledgement from either Prince Charles or Camilla. Basically, just cold-shouldered them.
Of their son marrying this Aboriginal woman.
Yeah.
Well, this is fairly brutal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they've got a lot to hide. They're pretty lazy. Prince Charles is pretty lazy. Like, he's got a lot of charity events to attend. He's got a lot of people have said, we've organised this charity event. You said you'd come, and can you come? It's at 5 o'clock on such and such a day. And everyone's paid huge amounts for their ticket because, supposedly the Prince of Wales is going to turn up. He doesn't even bother to turn up.
I've heard there's a lot of sentiment for skipping Prince Charles and going directly to William.
Yeah, there is, but William's illegitimate. So what's going to happen is that the true Queen of England at the moment is Olga Maria, and she's 81 and a half. I've spoken to her. She's got a beautiful speaking voice of about a 40-year-old, 35, 40-year-old. Absolutely beautiful voice. And, she takes a really good photograph. She absolutely looks royal. And her son is Francisco Manuel, who is the true Prince of Wales. And it's Francisco Manuel that I've been working with.
This is all just astonishing. I just don't see how they get it straight, Greg. They're going to play on the popular belief that, the apparent... They're not going to admit William or Harry is not legitimate. Are they? I just can't see how they could do it.
Well, the entire public knows that Harry's not legitimate and therefore he's not a prince. Because he's the daughter of Princess Diana, who is... a princess by marriage to Prince Charles, who's also a fake prince. So Prince Harry's not really a prince.
But there's no doubt that they're going to leave that as the popular impression, isn't it? I mean...
Well, the media is absolutely... dedicated to having a royal family that they can photograph.
I'm on the air.
And so what they do is just continue with a fake royal family, and and say wonderful things about them and photograph them turning up. But they know they're a fake, they know they're a fraud, and they've known they're a fraud since at least 1910 when King Edward VII murdered his older brother Marcos Manuel. You know, and it was only 5 months ago 4 months ago that I found the grave.
Why was it that the firstborn son of Queen Victoria was excluded from succession?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And it goes like this. Princess Victoria married blind Prince George of Cumberland and had a child, Marcos Manuel. That legitimized Victoria as a princess. Then there was an arranged marriage with a homosexual. And then the Rothschild, Lionel Nathan Rothschild, who was known as the King of Kings, conceived all of Queen Victoria's official 9 children.
Really?
Yeah. And then they were all married off at a young age, sort of.
And what was his official role in relation to the Queen at that point in time?
He owned the Bank of England.
Yeah, but I mean, he there was no legal. I mean, this was all out of wedlock. I mean, this was all, these were petards, as you're describing them.
Batard, B for Bob, batards.
Batard, yes.
Bastards, batards.
Yeah.
So with the royal family being illegitimate, they were married off at young ages, like 18, 19 to 22. I think the oldest was 27. And they were married off all around Europe, which meant that when the Rothschilds had the knowledge that all of these families and their descendants were illegitimate, they had total control over them to send their nations into war. And then the Rothschilds would supply money to both sides of the war and make huge profits on their loans.
So this is yet another reason why the Rothschilds family has become so powerful, because of the siring of all these illegitimate children by Queen Victoria.
Yes. And also they were the ones behind the delay in history, the 200-year delay in history from 1812 to 2012. And particularly the 19th of September 2012. And thereafter.
Greg, we're going to take our final break and then come back and talk about this delay in history. And I believe you have a book on Lord Mountbatten that you've just completed. Am I right?
Lord Mountbatten, yes. It's called The Final Mountbatten Report. Christopher Robin Goes to War. Most secret.
We'll be right back. Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal with Greg Hallett. You don't want to miss. Be right back. Greg, I got to check something and then we'll do the final. Sure. Yep. Fantastic stuff. Your knowledge of genealogy is just phenomenal, Greg. Do you have a photographic memory? You just have a really good memory.
No, I live it. I'm doing this. I'm actually in the royal family and I'm doing it. This is my job.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Thanks.
Wait. I've got to start us again.
Yeah.
Okay. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, concluding my conversation with Greg Hallett. If you haven't learned things you didn't know before, I don't know where you've been, because this is astonishing stuff. Greg.
Okay. So I'm just trying to think where we're up to. Yeah.
Well, you explained how, the Rothschilds had, the head of the Bank of England had all these children, batards, by Victoria. And I was observing that that's one more reason why they've had so much influence in the world is, having all this intimate knowledge of the history of the royal family. And where the skeletons are buried. I mean, this is just astonishing stuff.
Yeah.
But then you have the new book, too. So, Greg, we want to, however, you mentioned that Diana was a wrongful killing. Was that how you put it?
Unlawful killing.
Unlawful killing. It was
actually ruled by a judge as an unlawful killing.
Which sounds to me an awful lot like murder, and you're saying it's the polite term for murder if it's done by a royal family.
Yeah. So, by Princess Diana holding up the Torres Strait Islander children, she was saying to Queen Elizabeth, "These are your grandchildren,"
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And when we put pressure on the British monarchy by delivering a letter saying we have a legitimate and superior claim to the throne,
Yes.
Prince William was then forced to engage and marry, and then Prime Minister David Cameron went around to the Commonwealth heads of government and said, we want to allow Catholics, we want to allow firstborn girls to be the monarch, and we want to allow all the only monarch can be the descendant of Prince Charles.
Yeah,
Or the
claiming
current
that,
Prince of
you know,
Wales.
pretending as though this were a liberalization when actually it was a surreptitious act to preclude a challenge to the throne that would actually probably succeed.
Yeah. She did say that the descendants of the current Prince of Wales would be the monarch, which is interesting because the current Prince of Wales is Francisco Manuel. And, and
Oh, well, that might be a legal entree, might it not? I mean, that sounds like might be a powerful position to argue.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that, like, I'm his adopted son, which and his firstborn son is still quite young. He's still a child. So I'm here in England, acting on behalf of the true royal family, as the proxy to the monarch and the proxy to the Prince of Wales. And I've invited Francisco Manuel to England, and his family's advised him that it's too dangerous for him to be here. So,
Sure, they might try to kill him.
Yeah.
I mean, the risk of assassination could be very high.
Yeah, he's got British spies all over him in Portugal. But it was interesting that when we were writing together for 6 weeks in 2010, March to May 2010, we're based in a French-style chateau, and guards appeared on horseback, and no one recognised the uniform.
Guards appeared on horseback to protect him and you?
It looks that way. And
well, that's pretty damn interesting.
Yeah, in a uniform that no one recognised, and there's another man with a dog, and the dog was a unique breed of Samoyed husky.
Yeah.
And the Rothschilds love to breed hybrids and breed new species. Like their latest conquest is the world's biggest or tallest giraffe, which actually has 3 horns. So we think that the Rothschilds were actually guarding us.
Well, that's quite stunning, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what do you make of that? What would be the interest of the Rothschilds in guarding you?
Well, the Rothschilds were... well, Lionel Nathan Rothschild was the father of all Queen Victoria's children. But Lionel Nathan Rothschild's father, Nathan Mayer Rothschild, who took over the Bank of England after the Battle of Waterloo, he took it over between the 18th and the 22nd of June, 1815. He funded the Duke of Kent and Strathern out of his bankruptcy and allowed him to keep the Duke of Kent and Strathern in the style to which he was accustomed, which was getting drunk a lot, spending a lot of money on whores and mistresses. So Nathan Mayer Rothschild is actually the biological father of Queen Victoria.
The biological father of Queen Victoria.
Yeah, with the Duchess of Kent and Strathern, who was known as Victoire Louise. So that meant that Victoria, as a princess, was not a legitimate princess. So to legitimize Victoria, because they were very short on descendants, on children, on legitimate children of royals eligible to the throne. So much so there was actually a breeding race for British royals at that time. So Queen Victoria and Prince Consort Albert won. So Victoria became a legitimate princess by marrying blind Prince George of Cumberland and having a child with him, which was Marcos Manuel. And then for all the rest of her children, Victoria was married to Prince Consort Albert, who was a homosexual and wore the Prince Albert, which was stopped him from having intercourse. And Prince Albert was completely compromised, and he would hold Victoria's hand while she was given Barandunga, which is the old witch's herbal name for scopolamine, which is an inhibitor. And Lionel Nathan Rothschild was the father of all of Queen Victoria's legitimate children, and that explains the haemophilia in the royal family down to a T. They could never work out how the haemophilia was introduced into the British royal family, and that's how it was introduced.
By the Rothschilds.
Yeah. Now, Marcos Manuel doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. So, yeah. So now...
Have members of the royal family then died because of it?
Well, they've faked their deaths in the name of it. They've been sick with it. I'm not sure if they've died with it. Now, this whole operation...
Yeah. Does Charles have hemophilia?
I don't know. I don't think so. Because King George V was supposedly the son of King Edward VII and Princess Alexandrina, Princess Alexandra. But Princess Alexandra had an affair with the person who became Tsar Alexander III, and conceived King George V. So that introduced new blood. So,
non-hemophilic.
So this whole operation has been going since the European Wars, which started in about 1794 and ended around about 1815, 1820. And it looks like the Shin, the secret of the Shin was taken from Portugal, and the European wars were at least partly centered in Portugal. General William Carr Beresford was there. He was great friends with the Duke of Sardinia, both of them were great friends with the Duke of Wellington, friends, and they'd go to war together, the generals. So the breeding plan for the legitimate male monarch of England, of the United Kingdom, was a secret actually before Princess Victoria was even born. And when she was born a girl, it was delayed a generation, namely 14 years. So Princess Victoria gave birth to Marcos Manuel when she was 14, and at that time the legal age to marry, conceive, and was 12. So it looks like my Portuguese ancestors had cargo ships, and they were the ones who took the secret to the farthest sides of the farthest place away on the planet, and that was New Zealand. So they settled in the very bottom of New Zealand. You've got the North Island, you've got the South Island, and you've got Stewart Island, and off that there's a very, very small island which had no name. So they settled there, and they named it Bravo Island. And on the sailing journey from Lisbon in Portugal, the last Portuguese landmark that you see is Bravo Island. So they named the little island off the bottom of New Zealand Bravo Island. And they had 22 children and 21 survived. And the number for the shin, the number for the forbidden secret, is 21. So the idea was that one of their descendants, who turned out to be me, would be the one who would uncover the secret and put the true royal family back on the throne.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Now, David Cameron, of course, has been very skillful in negotiating these changes to the line of succession. But it does appear that there are certain legal vulnerabilities there, some of which you indicated in passing.
Well, he hasn't given full disclosure to the Commonwealth heads of government. He's obfuscated that we have a legitimate claim to the throne. And Francisco Manuel has been writing memorandums to the Queen, to Queen Elizabeth II, or as he calls her, Elizabeth II, because she's not the Queen. He's been writing to her since at least 2000, if not 1997. And those
That's he really?
Yeah, and those are actually listed. There's a big list of memorandums in the back of the book. There's about 2 pages just listing the titles of the memorandums. One was to Queen Elizabeth was on 12th December 2003, 1st March 2009, David Cameron 25th November 2009, David Cameron 6th October 2009, 14 October 2009, Queen Elizabeth II, his first one was 6th of March 1997. So since 1997, Queen Elizabeth has been aware that Francisco Manuel has a legitimate claim to the throne as the Prince of Wales, and that his mother, Olga Maria, which is actually a very true royal name, and the Russians will recognise that if someone's called Olga Maria, and especially without a surname, that's the name of a true royal. So Queen Elizabeth's been aware of it since 1997. And there's been a huge amount of pressure on me since winter solstice 1999. So since, for me, in the Southern Hemisphere, that was the 22nd of June 1999. Huge amount of pressure on me, just trying to remove all my assets, destroy my career, throw me in the courts all the time for trumped up charges on just nothing. Absolutely no justice, and 12 murder attempts in New Zealand.
All because you're more or less the point man for the legitimate successor to the crown.
Yeah. And I actually have paperwork to show that I'm Lord Chancellor to the true King of England, and we've got we've used the seal of the Holy Roman Emperor, and the High Court of Auckland refused to see it. And I was even holding it up in court, and the judge just wouldn't look. He was looking away.
Really?
Yeah, I was even holding this book up. Look,
Rick, that's just astounding.
This is in
astounding.
This is in February 2011. I'm even holding this book up, The Hidden King of England, saying, look, I'm the co-author with His Royal Highness Francisco Manuel. And he doesn't want to look. He looks and just sees that I'm holding a book, but wouldn't accept it as a court document because the Queen apparently owns all the court buildings, and all of the judges judge according to the right given to them by the Queen, and the Queen's fake, which is why our courts are now just supporting the mafia, and they don't support honest people. They can't settle a debt. All they do is support the mafia because the mafia has control of the monarchy because the monarchy is fake.
This is a ghastly situation.
Well, if you think about it, it's the last 150 years of history. Britain going to war, conquering countries and doing all these dastardly deeds, in the name of Britannia.
Now the United States has become the greatest aggressor nation in the world, Greg.
Yeah, but the United States is just a British plantation. It is. Legally, it's a British plantation, and it's run from the Temple Bar in the centre of London, the square mile of London. And the huge dragon, it's about a 4-metre high black dragon with its wings spread. And that is the Temple Bar marker. It's actually called the Temple Bar Marker.
I've seen the dragon.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. And so now I've got this book here, the final Mountbatten report. Christopher Robin Goes to War, and the Hidden King is coming out shortly. So at the moment I'm selling the final Mountbatten report, which is about Lord Louis Mountbatten, and I've got the background on Mountbatten. And part of it is he was the nephew of Princess Beatrice Battenberg, who gave him the royal secrets. And so what Lord Louis Mountbatten did is he got his nephew, Prince Philip, Lord Louis Mountbatten introduced Prince Philip, who was then Prince Philippos of Greece and Denmark, and he introduced her to Princess Elizabeth on the 22nd of July 1939. Now, Lord Louis Mountbatten came to own Broadlands, which is this huge mansion on 5,000 acres, 25 miles north of Portsmouth. He came to own that 18 days before, on the 3rd of July 1939. Now, in Broadlands used to be owned by Lady Viscountess Frances Jocelyn's parents, and then it passed to her brother and then to her nephew, and it went down to Lady Edwina Mountbatten and Lord Louis Mountbatten, and as the male, Lord Louis Mountbatten came to own it. Now, Viscountess Frances Jocelyn was the governess of all of Queen Victoria's children, including Marquis Manuel, up until the ages of 6 months, and we think that it was Viscountess Frances Jocelyn who delivered the chest full of royal marks to Marquis Manuel in Lisbon, in Portugal. And these were royal marks from Queen Victoria, some of which she'd made herself, which codified that Marquis Manuel was the true King of England. So Viscountess Frances Jocelyn was England's best known female photographer and one of the first female photographers, and she took all the photos of Marquis Manuel that we've got, and we've also got some childhood photos of King Edward VII, his younger brother, who's standing there with a broken rod. So she left this painting in Broadlands. Lord Louis Mountbatten came into ownership of Broadlands on the 3rd of July 1939. He'd already heard about it, but he didn't have concrete proof. He'd already heard about Marquis Manuel, but he didn't have concrete proof, and this painting gave him concrete proof. So he used that information, and he got his nephew, Prince Philippos of Greece and Denmark, to meet Princess Elizabeth, and then they became secretly engaged 1946 to 47, and then they became officially engaged in 1947, and Prince Philip revealed the family secret that they were illegitimate to Princess Elizabeth's father, King George VI. And King George VI was not very bright, and he was compromised, so he approved the engagement with Prince Philip and Princess Elizabeth. And then they were married, and they were married on the condition that Prince Philip get the royal marks back off us. Get all the royal marks and obliterate any history of Marquis Manuel. So, being Prince Philip became the head of the Navy, and he used his Navy intelligence connections to turn a Portuguese intelligence agent in Portugal, who was a member of the true royal family in Portugal. His name was Jose Carlos, and in 1968 he stole the Queen Victoria's Blue Copybook, which was Queen Victoria's birth records of Marquis Manuel, including things like his birth weight, time and day he was born, place he was born, the usual birth records, and also her time with Marcos Manuel in the first 5.5 months of his life, 5.5 months. And then he also got the baby clothes with the royal insignia on it, and he got the royal baby rattle, and that was out of an apartment in Lisbon. And he took those to Prince Philip, and that was the first and only bit of the royal marks that Prince Philip got. Prince Philip showed those to Lord Louis Mountbatten. Lord Louis Mountbatten showed them to Peter Sellers, his son, and then Peter Sellers made Being There, which is Peter Sellers' summary of all the scuttlebutt that he knew of Marcos Manuel from his father, Lord Louis Mountbatten, and from his great aunt, Princess Beatrice Battenberg, who was Queen Victoria's youngest daughter and secretary in charge of rewriting all of Queen Victoria's diaries and letters.
To exclude her
To exclude
firstborn.
Marcos Manuel, and to exclude blind Prince George of Cumberland, and who became blind King George V of Hanover. Now, historians do mention George in Queen Victoria's diaries, and they never knew what it meant, and they've never been able to work out what the constant love for George was. And George was blind Prince George of Cumberland, blind King George V of Hanover, and it was her first husband, and they were married their entire lives. They never divorced. And when Queen Victoria, she grew up playing with the Hanover crown jewels, and she married the man who became King George V of Hanover when she was 14. And she didn't give up the Hanover crown jewels for 30 years. She retained them for 30 years. And she used to wear the Hanover crown in her time off to celebrate her marriage to George.
Greg, I'm going to have you back. Time passes too quickly. This is just astounding stuff.
Yeah. Well, you can get me. I tell you what, I've now got my first bank account in 2 years. I actually have not been allowed to have a bank account. So,
Mind you, we're still winding down. Is there anything you'd like to add as a final observation?
You can find out. You can see my elevation to Lord Chancellor on the worldoftruth.net.
Worldoftruth.net.
Yes, you can order the final Mountbatten report. I know we haven't spoken about it much, but you can order the final Mountbatten report, which is 380 pages hardback. It's got a beautiful, beautiful cover. Yep.
Yes.
So it's got a gold ribbon in it, and it's got maps in it, and it's a really good book. It's a very good read. It's the forerunner to Operation James Bond. It's going to be officially announced by the royal family on the 27th of September, 2012.
But they won't be announcing the other book.
And
Is that going to be available to the public?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you can place book orders at theworldoftruth.net. So one word, theworldoftruth.net. And you can contact me at lordchancelloruk@gmail.com.
LordChancellorUK@gmail.com.
Yep. And if you want to, you can actually, you've got a PayPal account, you can actually pay into that account and make pre-orders.
Greg, you're fantastic. I can't thank you enough for being here, my friend. And I'm looking forward to having you back. I mean, this is just an education all by itself, I got to tell you. For the last 150 years of history, especially revolving around the crown and the royal family.
Yeah. It's been interesting.
Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal. Thank you, my special guest, the
Lord Chancellor.
Lord Chancellor
Greg Hallett.
in waiting, as it were. Amazing stuff, Greg Hallett, and all of you for listening. Greg, are they going to try to stop the book?
Which one? 4 sabotage print runs. I'm exiled out of my own country.
You've tried to sabotage the print run?
I'm stateless. You know? Can't go back to New Zealand. I'll just get killed there. They've already set up...
You're stateless, yes.
They've got 30 fake charges held at the police station. Internal Affairs agents have
Can you get the book out? I mean, it's going to be a sensation.
Yeah, I can get the book out, yeah. Just accept.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Fantastic. Fantastic, man. I've never understood your story so well as when you gave it today.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it's good to just break things down, you know. But really, there's a whole lot of topics I didn't cover. You know, we can do another interview.
Yeah.
Much, you know.
We'll do another one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just time to come out, you know, because the 19th of September is creeping up. You know,
that was the date for the challenge.
That's the date when the 200-year delay in history ends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know anyone at the Washington Post?
I don't actually. I mean, you think they'd like this story?
Yeah, because Peter Sellers being their movie codifies that the Washington Post is the place to release the story.